Hello and welcome again to Microeconomics. We're going to continue our discussion of perfect competition, and today we're going to extend it into the long run. Just a couple of little reminders about where we were. Remember that last time we were talking about perfect competition. It is a relatively rare industrial setup and doesn't occur very often. It takes very special circumstances. But we'll see at the end of this one why it is that it's important for us to talk about it, even despite the fact that it is fairly rare. In fact, it's probably the way all markets were to begin with, but slowly but surely we've grown out of them and come into other forms. Remember that it occurs when we have lots and lots of buyers and sellers. The product is a commodity. No one cares who they buy from, and so as a result, both the buyers and the sellers are price takers. They just assume the price is what it is and that they have no control over it. Reminder, where we finished last time is we had the market in equilibrium. We were looking at the firm's supply, and in fact we were looking at the market supply curve, and we came to understand that it was just the marginal cost curve above the shutdown point. The firm itself could be, it seeks to maximize profit, but it could in fact not be making a profit. It could be making zero economic profit. They could be actually enduring a loss, so they could be minimizing a loss, or they could be at a shutdown point. That is, at the point where the loss is exactly equal to what the fixed cost is. So we could find ourselves in this position. This would be our very best position. That is a position in which we're actually making an economic profit. Here we're making $1 a bushel. We're back to our wheat example again. We're making $1 a bushel for each of the 12 bushels, but that's the best possible world. In the long run, one of the characteristics we talked about was the ability of other firms to either enter or exit from the market. So firms in the long run are allowed to adjust their scale of operation. And firms are allowed to add to or remove themselves from the market. So in the long run, we have no fixed cost. All the resources are variable. We can ratchet up production, we can adjust production down, firms can enter, and firms can leave as a result of that. So in the short run, if the firm is actually doing as we depicted it a second ago, it's actually making an economic profit, then the result is we will attract new firms into the market. One way of thinking about that is to go back to our agricultural example. If it is the case that Farmer Brown makes lots of money this year growing wheat, then Farmer Smith, who lives next door, will say, I'm not growing any corn this year since Brown made so much money on wheat last year. I'm going to grow wheat this year. And so what happens then is the supply in the market increases, which causes price to decrease. Likewise, Farmer Brown might decide to expand his level of operation as well. That is, he has some fields that he's been growing other things in. He might decide to abandon all of that and grow nothing but wheat. As the price decreases, however, the result is it eradicates the economic profit, and ultimately the firms just break even. So in the short run, you might make an economic profit as a pure competitor or perfect competitor. However, as you attract other entrants into the market or you change your scale of operation, if everybody does that, ultimately it increases the market supply and decreases the price. On the other hand, if you are making a loss, there's a period of time that you can do that, but you can't do that forever. And so if you've been minimizing your losses, ultimately you'll decide to abandon that line of work and move into something else. You'll change the scale of operation, or you'll have certain firms who can't afford to stay in it any longer who will leave, and the result is the market supply curve will decrease, price will increase, and the economic loss will disappear. once again leading firms to simply break even. So in the long run, firms will only earn a normal profit. They won't earn any economic profit, and they won't incur any economic losses. Ultimately, the market supply curve will shift back and forth, changing price, changing scale of operation, changing number of firms that are in, until ultimately we end up in long-run equilibrium where we have a normal profit only and no economic profit. Better still, from society's standpoint, and we'll see this in just a second, the marginal revenue equals marginal cost rule will place us at the bottom of average total cost and at the bottom of the long-run average cost curve. So what does that mean for us exactly? Well, what it means is that we're at point E, which is zero economic profit. We're not making any economic profit whatsoever. Notice that also is at the bottom of the average total cost curve, which means that given the size of the plant that we have, given the size of operation we have, there's no way we can make this product any cheaper than what we're currently doing. Notice it also means that we're at the bottom of the long-run average cost curve, which means there's no better size plant than this. So from society's standpoint, this is the best of all possible worlds. It means every firm builds the most efficient plant possible. That's what's meant by the long-run average cost curve being at a minimum. We've built the size plant that is perfect in the industry, and they operate it at the perfect level of output. There's no possible way to produce this product any cheaper than what it's currently being produced at, given the current state of technology. So from society's standpoint, this gives us the maximum amount of product with the minimum amount of resources, and it means that we have absolutely the most efficient operation. This is precisely why we study perfect competition, is because perfect competition gives us a great example of the best thing that can possibly happen within a particular industry or a particular market. There's no way that it can be any better than what it currently is. We got the perfect plant, we got the perfect size plant, and we got the perfect operation of that plant. So in the short run, as price increases, demand also, from a demand increase, firms increase the quantity supplied. That entices an economic profit. The result is we have new firms enter, supply increases, price decreases, and we end up back at a normal profit only. So here's what essentially is happening. Probably the better one to look at is the one over to the right side over here. Here we have the market. We started out at point A. At point A, we have the intersection of the demand curve described as D, the supply curve described as S. What happened in this market is, for whatever reason, suddenly all of the consumers in this market decided they wanted more of this product, so demand increased from D to D prime. We moved from the intersection at A to B, which meant a price increase from P to P prime. Also meant an increase in output. The increase in output went from QA to QB. The result was the firm over on side A over there, notice its price, it was at a normal profit only at a price of P. Once the price goes up to P prime, now it suddenly is making a profit. That profit is the difference between the black dot and the red dot per unit times the quantity Q prime. So the little blue shaded in area there is the profit for the firm. But the result of that is the other people looking at that industry see that it's possible to make economic profits, and so they join the industry. And the result is that S shifts to S prime, resulting in a new equilibrium at point C. We're back to the original price again, which translating that to the individual firm over on panel A there means that we're now back to only a normal profit. There's a greater quantity being exchanged now, that is Q sub C, but it's at the same price. The black line in panel B there shows us what happens to this industry in the long run in terms of the supply curve. And notice that it's a flat line. It goes from A to C to S. I guess it's a star or asterisk there. And so this is what's known as a constant cost industry. The industry expands. It expands from quantity of A to quantity B to quantity C. The price initially goes up from A to B, but then it drops back down to from P to P prime, and then it drops back down to P again. And as we go through time, by adding new firms or expanding the scale of the existing firms, the supply curve is actually flat. So we end up with the supply curve S star or S asterisk, I guess is probably more correct there. So this is a constant cost firm. In the short run, the price increases, but then as the firms adjust to it, then everything's okay. Same thing would work in reverse. If we had a decrease in demand, we'd simply run backward along that black line. The price would decrease, the demand would decrease, firms would lose money, exit the market until we got back to a normal profit again. So this is now, here we, instead of going from G to A, now we're going from A to F to G again. And this is known as a constant cost industry. Essentially, we can make as many of these, in the long run, we can make as many of these products as we want to, and we can maintain the price of P simply by expanding and contracting the size of the industry. It's known as a constant cost industry. The long run average cost curve doesn't shift with changes in output. It just follows along that black line marked S star or S asterisk, and it's just a straight horizontal line. Now, most industries fall into that category, but there are a few that instead of doing that are called increasing cost industries. In an increasing cost industry, the effect of increases in output is an increase in price. So rather than the line being straight, in this case it in fact actually increases. Now this would happen anytime we have some particular resource that's in short supply. And so as we expand the output of that, the production, we start increasing the cost of the underlying resources. One of the assumptions we've been making in the constant cost case is that we can expand output, we can hire as many workers as we need to, and it doesn't cost anything. And that would make sense if it were an agricultural industry. However, if we were to expand in certain industries, we might find ourselves short of labor, or we might find ourselves short of some necessary resource. So this is what that picture looks like. In this case, as we expand the output, and probably the better place to look is in panel B, as we expand our output from point A to point C, notice that the price actually increases. Initially, we are at point A, that's the intersection of demand and supply, D and S. We have an increase in demand, which pulls us up to point B. So the price goes from P sub A to P sub B. We have an increase in suppliers. We have some people who see this increase in economic profit, and so they join the industry. And as they join the industry, it drives the price down. In this case, it drives the price down to point C there. It drives it down to price sub C, but it doesn't drive it all the way back down to price sub A. This is an increasing cost industry. It's an industry in which, as we expand, the cost basis goes up, and that would happen any time that we have a particular resource which as we expand becomes sort of a bottleneck or causes us problems in terms of our expansion. It costs us more in terms of our expansion. That could happen if we had laborers who had specific skills or special skills that were necessary, or if we had a particular resource that was necessary in order to produce this particular good or service. Now, I want to remind you of what we've said just a second ago, and that is the major reason we study perfect competition is it is the most efficient way. There's no way to improve on this industrial structure. And it's exactly what's meant when you hear economists talk about, I'm a free marketer. What they mean is a perfectly competitive free marketer. It is productively efficient, which means we're making stuff right, and it's allocative efficient because it means we're making the right stuff. We produce at the least possible cost, that is the minimum point on the long run average cost curve, and we produce the output that consumers value most, which means that the marginal benefit equals the price equals the marginal cost. So it's allocative efficient as well. That is, it's the best of all possible worlds. It's the most efficient way to produce things. Now, let's think about it for a second. From you as a producer, from the standpoint of being a producer, it would probably be your worst nightmare in a way because you essentially have no control whatsoever. You don't set your own price. In some senses, you don't even set your own production levels. You find yourself at the whim of the market that's around you, and farmers often say this. You know, you plant a crop in April or May, and you hope that you're going to be able to sell it for something when it comes into harvest in the fall. And so it's not actually a good way. You know, you as a producer would not like this sort of a setup. But for society as a whole, it's a great setup. By the way, it's not what's meant by most business people when they say, I like being a competitor. I really enjoy the competition. It's the thing that I want. In some senses, there is no competition here because you don't really set anything. You simply manufacture or make whatever the product is, and you take everything as a given. You don't make your own price. You don't even really set your own production level, so it's probably the worst of all possible worlds for you. However, from society's standpoint, it's the best of all worlds because it's as efficient as it's ever going to get. Next time we'll talk about the opposite extreme. Here we've been talking about what happens in the case where you have lots of producers, lots of buyers. The next case is going to be the case in which you have a single producer. It's known as pure monopoly or perfect monopoly, and it's the one that can get you into trouble if you work too hard at trying to achieve. We thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time.